Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Question series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Pras, how are you? Welcome to Gameweek 8. FPL is back, and then another break for the international break next week, but exciting 24 hours to go about before the new Gameweek launches. How are you doing?
Well, I'm okay. And like I mentioned in my preview tweet that everyone's sick of me. So, I was on Black Box yesterday and, above average before that. So they have heard a lot from me. Today is about you. You're on Wildcard. So, yeah, we're going to go through that. We'll talk about my potential wildcard in 9. So lots to discuss. So let's get to it.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on my wild card and ready to get roasted. So, thank you guys for joining us today. First of all, let's look at the fixtures from game week 8 till game week 16. So, this is by Lego Mane, the great Lego Mane. For the viewers that were with us last season on Burning Questions, we had a lot of Lego Mane fixtures. So, shout out to him. And it's a good indication of sort of the blocks of good fixtures for certain teams, and then you can also kind of mix and match and see which combination of teams have good rotation in terms of fixtures as well. Obviously, we're pretty familiar with everything going on from here on out. Now your strategy has to be: do you wildcard now? Do you wildcard in game week 9? Do you wildcard in game week 13? Obviously, there's a blank in game week 12 with City and Arsenal, right? So big hole there, and then blank this week as well. So lots of questions, very team dependent. But anything jump out to you initially from the fixture map, Pros?
No. I just wanted to have this here because we're going to refer to it a lot because we're at a time where people are thinking about, teams to jump on that aren't the top teams, right? So you need to sort of have the right window to jump on them. And I think this is fantastic, as usual, by the fantastic Lego Mane. So when we'll talk about why Leicester, why West Ham and these teams and why Newcastle, this will come in very handy. So we'll use it as a supplement when we talk about the teams.
Awesome. So moving fast, very unlike us, Pros.
Get right to it.
Okay. So here we have my wildcard team. It is a little different. It is a little interesting. Maybe wild. Maybe I'm going crazy, but I'm pretty happy with it. And first of all, I want to shout out my friend AJ. I think FPL AJ on Twitter, who I interact with a lot, and he sort of gave me the idea of doubling up on Madison and Barnes. So that's where the inspiration came from, and we talked for a couple hours about it, and that's what FPL Wildcard Week does to you, right? You just talk nonstop. This is not set for sure, but pretty happy with what it is. For the listeners, my wildcard team for Game Week 8 is Pope in goal, Ward as backup. It's a 3-4-3 right now with Zuma, Trippier, Cancelo. In the midfield, I've got Andreas, Son, Madison, and Martinelli. And up top, I've got Isaac, Haaland, and Mitrovic. On the bench right now, I have Barnes, Neco Williams, and James, who's not playing this game week. So, there's some money on the bench this game week, but I am trying to think a little bit more long term. I am trying to realize that there are certain issues that are going to rise, such as Salah, such as Trent, such as I might want a triple city at some point. There's Bowen on the radar. There's Zaha in game week 10. There's a lot of things, but this draft sort of gets me flexible, and we'll talk about Sun for a while soon. But what are your initial thoughts on this, Pros?
Yeah. So slow down. We're gonna dissect this properly. Okay, so I think there is a template team which has Pope, Cancelo, Trippier, Martinelli, Haaland, Mitrovic, and then we come to key decisions. So I'm gonna ask you your thinking on those key decisions. So the first key decision for me was Son versus Kane versus De Bruyne, basically the second premium. And so apart from your undying love for Son, obviously you've not gone for a Kane, and some people are saying Kane is a potential captaincy option. By the way, again, for those watching, Isak will not be his captain. I think you're still intending to captain Haaland. That's just something that you left. But question is, how did you think about that? What is your thought process on going for a midfielder? Is it that you can get to a Salah more easily? Why not a Kane that can be a potential captaincy option in game week
11.
11 when City play Liverpool. So talk me through that first.
Yeah. Actually, the draft I have up here, Haaland is captain. So just in case
Oh, right.
anyone got
Okay.
confused.
Okay.
Yes, I think Kane is totally viable. I think Kane is actually probably the much more sound decision over Son in terms of Son versus Kane, because the mid-price bracket players I want to play around with is Zaha, um, Bowen and Madison and Barnes. Basically, chasing hauls through a group of game weeks instead of chasing hauls through just one game week at a time, if you know what I mean. I also have Son. I also had KDB over Son for a while, and I'm still back and forth on that. I
We'll
just
come specifically to
yeah.
Son. First,
Okay.
tell me the
Okay.
premium. So why do you think a KDB or a Son is better than Kane?
Why do I think KDB is better than Son and Kane?
No, basically a premium midfielder is better than a premium
Right.
attacker. Is it that you think Isak has potential or?
Right. Fair. Okay. So basically, I think Isak has potential. I like the Mitrovic-Isak combination up there. And I also like that I can get from Son to Salah in game week 9 in one move. I do have like 1.4 in the bank, basically.
Right.
So it's like a 1 week punt in some ways. But for example, if he does well, I can continue to play him. Good fixtures till Liverpool's run in game week 13. So there's that option as well. Yes, Kane makes sense because you can captain in an 11 if you keep going with it. But it's just the sort of the idea was a 1 week punt on Son before I can get to Salah, just in case. If not, I can get to anyone I want. And another guy I'm eyeing up is Sterling in game week 9 because I really think Chelsea's going to be very attacking moving forward. So it was kind of that flexibility. KDB is the sensible play here, I think, still. I'm the first to admit it. But there's just this gut feeling that I think Son starts this week. So that's where I'm at.
That's fair. I think your logic of having that premium or a semi-premium slot in midfield, optionality to go Salah, makes a lot of sense to me. And I think if I was wildcarding, I would be inclined to do that as well. Even though I think Isak, while he's great this week and maybe game week 9, you will sort of want to deal with that slot at some point.
Yep.
But there are lots of options there.
Mm-hmm.
Tony's there, Solanke's there. So I think I think that makes sense to me. So now talk to me about the 8 million mids. So there's obviously an option to go Bowen. You mentioned there's some people are looking at Saka because he has a good fixture this week. He has North London derby on penalties potentially. Some people are looking at Maddison. You've gone Barnes. So we'll come to the Leicester double up, which is interesting. Why have you gone Maddison and not? You don't have Zaha, right? So why not that kind of a play? Is it just basically you wanted another body this week?
Yeah, that too. But I just think that I want to wait on Zaha. I don't think Zaha's fixture. What are Zaha's next two fixtures? Blank and Chelsea aren't the best. I don't think Bowen's next two fixtures are the easiest either, which I believe is.
Well, he's Everton away this week.
Yep. And then
we'll go back to Legomane's
Everton and Wolves.
ticket.
Yep.
So Wolves is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see hauls there, right? And I just like the idea of doubling up on Maddison and Barnes till game week 12, I believe it is. Yep, game week 12. I'll probably move for Zaha around game week 10. And then look for a Bowen opening around 13 and Diaz as well. So it's sort of like a lot of pre-planned moves. And basically the idea for me is I can get to anyone I want with this structure. And I'll kind of see how the next international break and next game week plays out. Hopefully, I don't have to make a move in game week 9, but the Son to Salah, the Son to Sterling is there in place for.
Okay. I'm basically mentally counting your planned moves, right? So right now you've told me Son is going to somebody, Sterling or Salah. You've told me Barnes or somebody can become a Bowen or a Zaha. So that's 2 pre-planned moves. Isak, you'll have to kind of deal with him in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if Wilson comes back and stuff like that. I'm not talking you out of this, by the way. I'm just sort of, as a non-wildcarder, I'm sort of trying to think, how are you going to address this? Because if there's so many things that you have to deal with or you potentially deal with, in addition to things that come up, I mean, international break could come up with things. A few game weeks now, 9 and 10 could come up with things. So keep that in back of your mind. So for example, I've seen people bench Zaha now because they know they want him. or players like that who
Yep.
they know they will want. You've done that with James. I think I really agree with benching James because he is the standout defender from game week 9.
Yep.
But this team doesn't have Trent, it doesn't have Salah, it doesn't have Zaha. These are players, when we'll come to my wildcard, all three of them are in there. So I think that's something for people to think about. This is not to make you change your mind, but it's for people who are on wildcard to think through how much they want to go into this game week versus how much do they want to attack this game week versus how much they want to sort of save the headaches down the line.
No, it's totally fair. This is a very, very aggressive play here. Zuma rotates really well with Trippier. When Trippier has, I think, tough fixtures in 11, 13, and 15 or something like that, Zuma has good fixtures. I'm not sold on Emerson. I know he started today, but he's too risky. I already have so many risks in this team. I just like the idea of trying to attack these Leicester fixtures. They're still getting attacking, underlying stats. I just think that maybe this turns out well. It could turn out bad, but there's the ability to move around the mid-price brackets there. Again, which is why Kane or KDB is probably the sensible play. Because if I go Kane, for example, Pras, then I'll go Kulusevski, for example, instead of Son, and that can be sort of held and moved to Bowen or Zaha without having to think about Salah. So it's a aggressive play, but it's just a little bit of gut feeling and this and that. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So you've answered my question on Zuma as well. So I think the West Ham rotation with Trippier makes sense to me. It's not a great pick, but I get it because he has a good fixture this week or decent fixture. Everton are not the most attacking. And then you get a good run as somebody who can play. And actually, I'll come to Wildcard 9. The main advantage of Wildcard 9 was Chelsea players. We had no clue. I mean, yesterday, Potter gave no clues on who are the players to target. Apart from James, I can't confidently punt on a single Chelsea player. So that slot would have been for Fofana on other people's wildcard in game week 9. It's not anymore. So I don't mind Zuma at all. I think it's fine. I think Sufal is also a shout. Emerson could be punty. You're right, especially if you need him. And you mentioned that in game week 11, in game week 12, when there's a blank, you won't get Zuma off with a good fixture, but it is what it is, right? Things will change by then.
Just a quick note on Chelsea while we're there. Potter is obviously very flexible manager. He changes things around a lot, but look at the very first game. He started two wingbacks basically in Aspi and Cucurella, as center backs, left center back, right center backs, and they're very, very attacking, and so it just goes to show they're going to be very attacking. And Fofana is definitely bench risk. I don't think he's going to be a guaranteed starter every week. And if there is one nailed person, Pras, from Chelsea, I think for me it has to be Sterling.
Yeah, so let's talk Chelsea when we come to my draft, game week 9 draft, because Chelsea will be much more relevant in game week 9 and beyond. But okay, coming back to your draft, third striker, did you think Tony? We already talked about Kane. Did you think about Solanke or anybody else, or you think Isak is the guy?
Yeah, Solanke makes sense. Great fixtures all the way till the World Cup, and I did think about Tony. I think Tony is a great pick, but it's just the upside in Isak. And also I was talking to FPL TT about Isak and what happens when Wilson comes back. And, there's rumors about him moving to the side and catering to Wilson. And but Isak is also a very expensive player that they bought. And what he's saying is that Almiron will not get dropped because they press so much that Almiron's a key cognate to that pressing. So there is definitely the worry of him being possibly rotated, but I think he just moves to the side and still starts alongside Wilson. But they won't play two top, is according to what TT said. Yeah.
Okay. So it could potentially be a problem down the line, but for the moment, I think, look, if I was in wildcard, I'd have him for sure. I mean, he has hat-trick potential this week, even in game week 9. So you just sort of ride it out as long as Wilson is not ready immediately, which it doesn't sound like he is. So I get it. So now let's come to your boy, Son. What have you got to tell us? I think the clear questions are, he's not looking great. His basically the question is, will he even start against Leicester? So
Yep.
how can you punt on a player who may not even start this weekend and then carry the problem beyond the international break? So tell me about Son.
I mean, I have a pretty long section on him. Should we go ahead with it or get to the
I
the
mean,
main?
do it now. I mean, if doesn't have to be too. I mean, you decide. But
Yeah, yeah.
first, tell me, why do you even think he'll start on the weekend?
Um, I think that as a just a fan that you know, where do I begin? Okay, so let me just go through this.
And the answer can be that, guys, I don't advise you to get Son. I'm getting Son.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
no worries.
That's the
That's
that's the crux of
understandable.
the answer. Basically, I don't advise anybody to get Son. I just think he starts. I think that Conte showed signs at Inter Milan, at Juventus, at Chelsea, where one of the issues with Conte is that he's very slow in making changes, whether it be in-game tactics or he has to have a multiple streak of losses before he'll really change things up. And this is like one of those cases right now where they just have one loss, and he's continuing to start Son. He's continuing to start Perisic. I think that Son will start against. My brain's working slow. Son will start this week, and Sessegnon will start alongside him. I just think that they're better combination together. Perisic and Son are taking up positions together. They're both making the inside runs, and sort of overlapping runs are not working together. One second.
You're right.
Yeah. Just
While you're setting that up, I see in the chat somebody's asking about Paul O'Keefe's predictions for Spurs. Don't rely on that. It's a Friday early deadline. He usually tweets Friday evening if it's a Saturday game. He may or may not basically send you his predicted lineup. And I would also add that he's been wrong last couple of times. So it is at the end of the day just a prediction.
yeah. Okay. The photos are not up, so I'll just thread this on Twitter later. But essentially, there was a very good article on the Athletic about how Son's underlying stats are still good right now. He's had a lot of chances. It's just not falling for him right now. And in the end, Perisic and Son has to work for Spurs to sort of level up. And I wish I could show this.
That's okay. Let's talk it out. It's okay. So I agree with you. Look, there's a North London derby just after the international break. So a lot of people are sort of speculating that Perisic could play on the right or Son could get dropped. I tend to think that before a North London derby, basically, if you don't do well in this game, you go into an international break on the back of a loss in Europe and, let's say, a draw against Leicester, a disappointing performance. He's under pressure. And why would he not need to rest his players? I mean, they've had a long break. Tuesday they played, and now they play Saturday evening. So there is not a rest element to it. It's a tactical element to it. So would you really want to make tactical changes a game before the North London derby? That's where the question mark is. And you'd hope that he'd basically play the same team and try to make them work better, right?
Yep. Okay, yes. So also just Pras, in general, Son is a streaky player, right? And in 2017-18, he failed to score in the last 10 games. This is from the Athletic article. In 18-19, he had a run of 9 games without a goal. Same thing in 19-20, 7 games without a goal. 2021, 7 games without a goal. So the streaks are there, and I just know that what I've seen in the last couple of games, especially the Fulham game, he really could have hauled that game, right? And I just think that if he's able to finish, his XG is still the same as last season. If anything, he's getting more shots in the box right now. His touches are down, but there's been signs. So I think that Leicester, with them, being able to press up and not be so good defensively, it'll open up chances for Son on the counter. But again, this is just a gut feeling mostly than anything.
Fair enough. Look, I think you summarized it well. it's a gut feel. You want to go for it. You would advise other people to go KDB if they wanted for that slot. For people like me, I'll talk about my bus team. I'm still debating Son versus KDB, and it'll come down to what I hear from Pep tomorrow, because let's not forget that City have also played Wednesday night and they have an early kickoff on Saturday. So it's not like De Bruyne is rotation proof. And I think, there's somebody in the chat, Sikander, has mentioned that Son could be dropped, not rested. So it's not about the rest at all. It could be just that Son is essentially moved out of the team and they try out Kulusevski and Richarlison, who's looking great. So I think Son has his risks. We all know the upside. He's playing Leicester. If there's any game he scores a brace and comes back into it, it's against the team that gives you a lot of space to run in, and Son loves that. So logically, it makes sense for Conte to play him, but there is a huge risk. So on Wildcard, I would definitely caution people not to go there. On a 1 week punt, like myself, if you're punting before a Wildcard, you could go there because of the upside. So that's where I'd leave it. So on your Wildcard team, let me see, is there anything else to discuss? How will you tackle game week 11 and 12? So right now you have no Liverpool.
Yep.
Which is fine for 11. But then for 12, you will have no Salah, no Trent. Salah will be the most captained in 12.
Yeah.
So what is your Liverpool plan?
So I guess the idea is to go from Son to Salah. I think that Salah is probably still going to tick along, and I'm afraid of not going with Trent as well. So to be missing out on both doesn't make sense, and it is that captain issue, which is why I go back to Kane being probably the better option than Son in game week 11, for example. But Diaz is also another option. I mean, I can move to Diaz from Barnes or Madison at any point and forgo Salah till the rest of till the World Cup as well. Yeah.
Okay. Kamzi's in the chat. He agrees with me completely that you should have Barnes instead of Barnes. You should have Zaha on the bench. I agree completely, because you're booking in yet another transfer. Barnes is not going to be in your team forever. Zaha will definitely be in your team in game week 10. Just bench him. But I'm not going to talk you into it. But that's certainly something that, as soon as I saw your team, that jumped to me. But other than that, look, it looks decent. It looks well set up. You haven't overcommitted. You don't have too many planned transfers other than Son and potentially Barnes here. Will you keep Martinelli through the blank? So you intend to bench him?
Yeah, I think I'll keep him to the rest of the season. I can't see a reason why I would get rid of him, because he's just the best value player in the game right now, I think, or one of the best value players. So I'll bench him throughout the blank. Yeah.
Okay, nice segue to my game week wildcard 19, because I don't have Martinelli.
Yep.
Shall we go there?
Yep, we've got your team up here.
All right, so my now this is obviously I'll have 2 weeks to tinker, and we'll do another video where I have more crystallized thoughts on the wildcard. But the first thing to say is, people who are debating between 8 and 9, I think the advantage of 9 is almost completely lost. The advantage of wildcard 9 was you could punt on Spurs. I think given that we're debating if Son starts, Perisic starts, that's gone. I think the advantage that you could have learned something about Liverpool and Chelsea in the European games, sort of that is accounted for, because we've not learned anything on Chelsea apart from James is good. On Liverpool, maybe we've learned a little bit that they looked a lot better with Thiago back and Matip back, but still there's nothing now new that we will know, because they don't have a fixture in game week 8. So I feel like the advantage is lost unless there is any injury that shakes anything up. I think, if you're on the fence, if you should wildcard 8 or 9, you should almost go there. The reason for my thinking of wildcard 9 was simply that with a -4, my team looks almost like yours. So all I'm saying is, for 4 points, I'm taking this advantage of tinkering over the international break and getting some insurance if anything goes wrong. Maybe a punt in game week 9. So for example, I could go Barnes instead of Zaha just for a week. But that's basically it. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. So people who are on the fence, who are taking -8s just to delay their wildcard, don't do that. I don't think there is a massive opportunity anymore. So now I'll talk about my team. Right now, I have Guaita and Kepa in goal. So that one is a little bit interesting. I just think that if Kepa is starting, he's 4.4. And there is some school of thought that he's a better passer than Mendy. Mendy's been out of form, so he may get his place. And then you have Guaita as an insurance. Maybe he doesn't keep his place, and then Guaita comes in, because the worst fixture that Guaita has between now and the end of the window, which is 16. So if you go to Lego Mane's chart, I just want to show you Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, basically after Chelsea, have one of the nicest runs you can imagine. And so I just thought, they play Leeds, Leicester, Wolves, Everton, Southampton, West Ham, and Nottingham Forest. So there is no team here which is even in the top 10 that I can see. So I feel like Guate could work out. Their defense has been quite shocking so far this season, but last season it was pretty good. So it's almost like a fixtures play like people are doing with Bowen. So that's the thinking. He could easily become. I could combine the two and make them Pope eventually if I wanted to. But at the moment, I've gone for that. James, Cancelo, Trippier, same as Wildcard 8, so nothing different here. I've got Trentin. Some people are benching him, so again, there's no advantage. I've gone for Botman, but I don't know. I don't know who I want for the 4.4 million slot. It could be Justin. It could be a West Ham defender. It could be Botman. We'll see. So that's the back line. In midfield, I've got Zaha and Maddison. So the two guys who Wildcard 8 people are looking to get, I've already got. So that's basically one advantage in 9, that I'm not booking any transfers. This team is good to go until game week 11. Of course, things will come up, but I'm not planning any transfers here. I've got Salah in already. I feel like his game against Brighton is an opportunity. But Brighton without Potter at home, yeah, we may not captain him. We'll still captain Haaland, maybe, but I think it's worth going there. And then you have Bailey, who's looking very good. I think people need to consider Bailey on Wildcard 8 as well, because now Watkins is out. This means that Villa can't play 2 up top. And if they don't play 2 up top, Bailey is pretty much the likely starter on the right. So think about Bailey a little bit. Good fixture this week and decent backup. Bailey also has a fixture in game week 12, which is a good one, who can cover for a benching of a City asset. And then I have Pereira. So I don't have Martinelli in my midfield simply because I feel like I can always get him back. He's cheap enough that if I wanted to downgrade a Maddison or a Zaha in due course after game week 12, I can do that. So that's a little bit of a punt. I know the risks going against Martinelli, but I think it could work. And then I have Mitrovic, Haaland, and Solanke in up top. So the only difference here is Isak instead of Solanke. He's a good enabler, good fixtures. He's probably not going to be a starter, but he's a good third forward.
Yep, go ahead.
So that's my thinking. What questions do you have?
Obviously, the very interesting Keita pick over Pope. Are you very confident in that, or you just don't value keeper? Keeper being that different for the price points.
It's the price point, right? I mean, I think I'm right now spending 4.9 on my keeper. Pope is what, 5.2. So as I said, I could definitely see myself going there. At the moment I've left this, I don't know what are the noises. If before the press conference Potter is talking up Kepa, we'll probably go there. I just wanted to show that you could do more with your funds. The other thing on my mind is Pope is now only 0.2 million cheaper than Alisson.
Yeah.
So you could get a Liverpool keeper for just 0.2 more. Now, I know that being a keeper also involves bonus, also involves save points, but Alisson was a top 10 FPL point scorer last season. And, he could be an option. So I think the keeper slot is a little bit open, but there's nothing wrong with Pope at all.
Yeah, yeah. How about Bailey? Are you worried about his rotation, or you feel like Andreas could cover there?
Andreas is easily a starter with Fulham's good fixtures. Solanke is easily a starter. Botman is a starter. So I'm playing one out of those 4 where actually I'll have benching headaches. So I don't care if Bailey doesn't become an option in the future. I could even take out money out of Bailey's spot or Botman's spot. So TBD. I will see which options emerge over time. But my thinking as a game week 9 wildcarder is, how do I sort of position myself? Because I'm not committing to transfers, how can I be ready for game week 11, game week 12? So let's say nothing comes up. Haaland to Kane is an option because Haaland will play Liverpool. Now he could do well there. Then he has a blank. You could just basically do a Haaland to Kane hokey cookie, and that's where I could use my transfers. I could use my transfers going Cancelo down to a Chilwell if he starts playing for Chelsea again. Those are things that I would be able to do because I'm not committing any transfers. So those are more luxury moves, but I can do those. So I can potentially go for a Barnes in game week 9 instead of a Zaha because he plays Chelsea, whereas Barnes plays Nottingham Forest, and then move to a Zaha. So these are options which you sort of over-engineer as you overthink your wildcard, but this is where I am right
now. Yep. Okay. Should we do the game week 13 wildcard?
Yep. Yeah. So what I wanted to say, it's not a wild card, by the way. So the next section on Wildcard 13 is essentially there are certain people who don't want to wildcard now because they have a decent enough team.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike me, who want to dead end, they're thinking maybe I can just make a few transfers, make my team okay, and then exit out of the blank, which is the City and Arsenal blank in 12, and wildcard in Gameweek 13. So what I've brought up here, there's a member of the FPL Twitter community called FPL Cheese. His Twitter handle is at Crossy, CROSSY DJ86. And I really liked his plan. So I thought I'd share that with everyone. Everyone's team is different, so everyone's plan will be different. But I want to talk through this because there are certain scenarios where don't just follow the crowd of Wildcard 8, Wildcard 9. There are other very viable strategies. So what he had in his team, I'm going to read it out. He had Edison in goal, Trent, Trippier, Saliba, and Cancelo. He had Luis Diaz, Martinelli, Andreas, and then Haaland, Jesus, and Archer. And he had Salah, James, and De Silva on his bench. So what he's thinking now is I can either dead end Salah, like me, Salah to De Bruyne or Son. I can go Archer to Mitrovic, and I can do something very similar to me. But he's saying, why should I do that? Why not bench Salah, bench James, and sort of fix the team so that I can dead end to Game Week 12. So what he's planning to do is this week, he will sell Trent, Diaz, and Archer. He'll get a second Newcastle defender. So he'll get Schär, he'll get Maddison, and Mitrovic. All three guys that are really good until Game Week 12. Then the week after, he's going to start offloading his Arsenal assets and his City assets and getting more of these players that are good till 12. So next week, he's planning Saliba to Justin. Again, Justin has good fixtures, as we've talked about with Leicester. Game week 10, he's going to go Martinelli to Zaha. Just before Martinelli is playing Liverpool, he'll get Zaha, who has a great run. Game week 11, he's looking at Cancelo to Cucurella. Again, you're losing a City asset who's going to blank and play Liverpool. He's getting Cucurella, who has good 2 defensive fixtures. And then the last hurrah is game week 12, where he can do a dead-end Jesus to a Darwin Núñez, because Jesus is blanking and Núñez is playing a good fixture against West Ham at home. Not everybody follows this path, but what I'm trying to show here is, if you go to the next one, what is the team he ends up with in game week 12? It's a team with Ward in goal. Obviously, that's not a great start, but he's playing Leeds at home. He has got double City defense, double Newcastle defense. He's got Justin, Maddison, Zaha, Salah, Mitrovic, Darwin Núñez. So it's a decent team. And a lot of people will look at it and say he's going to lose points to the field between now and game week 12. But my point is he will win points against the field after game week 12, because in 13, he'll have Haaland, he'll have Salah, he'll have maybe triple Liverpool, triple City. Because if you look at the fixture ticker, if you go to the next slide, after game week 12, some of the teams with the best fixtures, we're back to game week 1 scenario. The teams with the best fixtures are Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United. So you can basically attack those premiums and get ahead of the curve, while the rest of us are sort of working through the maze through using our transfers and not sort of being ahead of the curve. So people who are considering a game week 13 wildcard, definitely do this plan. Can you offload gradually your Arsenal and City assets? Can you get some of the Crystal Palace, some of the Chelseas, some of the Leicesters, and then sort of get through this week? Now, I have to say, if you go back to his original team, Andy, I just wanted to make a couple of other points. The original team, which had Edison in goal, he got lucky, right? He got lucky because he didn't have Sanchez in goal. He doesn't have a Ramsdale who he needs to deal with because he has bad fixtures. So Edison is a nice glue goalkeeper. He had no Brighton players at all. So a lot of us were kind of doubled up. He didn't have that. So he was in a fortunate position. And I think the other fortunate position was he was already benching James, or he had James already. Like people like me had sold James. So he's ready for that Chelsea player from next week anyway. So I think look at your team. If you can create a plan like this, there is a very viable route to go wildcard 13. But if you feel that the sacrifices you're making are too many, especially starting from game week 9, don't do it. Play your wildcard. So that's the thinking. I don't have anything else to add here unless you do as well. I'm looking at a few questions now on your wildcard, on my wildcard. So on my wildcard, the question is, what do you think about not having Cancelo? There's a question from Simon. I think that's a great question. So on my wildcard 9, I could consider no Cancelo because he plays Man United, Liverpool, and blank in the 4 weeks. So it's an option. And Simon, I've kept him because I wanted a slot for a Chilwell if he becomes available. So I could play Cancelo for 2 weeks and then make him into a Chilwell if he becomes ready. Somebody else is asking, why have I gone for TA and Bailey over Bowen and 4.5? It's TAA, man. I mean, if you asked this question game week 1, people would have laughed, right? I mean, look, Trent, despite Liverpool's problems, is still the highest XA defender in the game. He's 7.5 million. He's going to drop to 7.4 most likely over the break, or maybe even tonight or tomorrow. I mean, I think my advantage of wildcarding in game week 9 is that I have Liverpool assets that other people are ditching right now. Whether it works out or not is another question. So that's I think all we have.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We always say how long does a wild card last, and I think there's a sort of a medium between 4 or 5 game weeks since after you pull it. So it's a good comparison to see if a wild card now versus strategizing, depending on your team situation and wild carding in game week 13 through 16, is going to be the big difference then. Because by the time game week 13 comes around, wild carders like me, unless we have a firm plan, and especially if you're very aggressive like I am right now, it's going to be very difficult to navigate. But one of the things I've done, Pras, over the last 2 seasons is sometimes I don't pre-plan too much. I sort of kind of maybe just play the next few fixtures and then go from there. I think that's sort of the style I've been playing FPL in if I look back. But knowing you and the thing you just said about TAA and how you like to plan way in advance and the way you think about it, it makes sense. I think TAA and Salah are perfectly viable options throughout this tough fixture period as well. So yeah, a differential advantage.
Yeah, and some people are benching Trent as well. So like you're thinking of benching Barnes, or other people are benching Zaha or James. It's a viable strategy on Wildcard 8 as well to bench Trent, or equally viable. I mean, I talked about it yesterday, so I don't want to repeat myself, but it's going against Liverpool is fine. Yeah, the ownership is lower. They're not captaincy options as such. So it's fine if you don't want to do it, but it's equally fine to punt on the second best team in the league that are less owned and play Brighton at home in the first fixture. So I don't think either strategy is wrong.
Yeah.
In mine, I'm punting against Martinelli or potentially against Cancelo. So those are also risks. So there is no wildcard draft that is better than not. You're just changing the risk that you're taking. I'm not taking a De Bruyne risk. I am taking a De Bruyne risk, for example.
Yep, fair.
I'm looking at a few other questions before we go to bus teams. Okay. So I'm going to ask you on your wildcard 8. So someone's asking, why haven't you looked at Perisic? I mean, basically, if you're willing to punt on a Spurs asset, you're struggling for a third defender. I actually think that as well. If you get news tomorrow that Perisic is starting, because he's going to start the North London derby, I think we're pretty sure about that.
Yep.
If he's starting tomorrow, through any route that we find out he's starting tomorrow, would you consider him over Zuma on using the funds to basically have that third defender, which people are struggling with on Wildcard 8?
Fair, yeah. If we knew for sure, but we won't know for sure unless Conte comes out and says that he's starting Perisic, because there is a very reliable predictor and no fault of his own. It's getting really hard to predict right now, right? And personally, I think Sessegnon starts this week. That's just a personal gut feeling. But if there was news that Perisic starts, then yeah, for sure, I would consider him over Zuma. But Zuma just helps me sort of plan from here to game week 16 and a transfer not to worry about. It's not exciting at all. I don't love it. But he's just the replacement for Trippier when Trippier has tough fixtures, but Trippier can also play again in those tough fixtures because he is a set piece monster. So the idea is just to go with the three guys in the back that I like: Cancelo, Trippier, and James, and then sort of my punt will be Son, and that's about it. And because that's already a transfer I have to deal with probably moving forward.
Yeah. I think people need to calibrate what are the transfers they want to commit. So, for example, there's a comment you could go for Perisic and then switch to James. That would solve a starter issue as well. So that's also an option. Yep. Interesting one. But when will you switch? Because Perisic will start the North London derby, and I'm happy. If I own Perisic, I'd be happy to start him in that game or any game where I know he's almost like Haaland light. Obviously, you're not captaining him, but any game where Perisic is starting, I think you should be happy to start him. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. So that's that. I think there's another interesting one.
Okay.
Foden. We didn't talk about Foden. He didn't start on Wednesday. I think it's almost a guarantee because it's a short turnaround for City that Foden's going to start. Whether he's for a punt or maybe a longer term, people are sort of going for De Bruyne as the City choice. Like you could look at Isak and KDB. Instead, you could look at Foden and Kane. I think that's a very good strategy as well. I mean, other than the fact that you're booking 2 transfers, if you're not leaving money in the bank for Salah, I think that's viable. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think Foden is as close to locked as a starter as it gets in terms of midfielders for Pep. So, we've always talked about Foden, Pras, since last season, about the potential in him, and when you have Foden and he's starting, and you look at the team sheet, it's just such an exciting pick. So, it makes sense there, but I still think KDB is the much safer pick if you're going to go for someone in City. And so it's not so much the 2 combinations. It's basically, for me, you have to pick between KDB or Kane if you're going to go that route.
Fair enough. Okay, question from Stoichkov, who's basically a big scout contributor, and I've seen him on Hall of Fames as well. So on Wildcard, would you get Zaha now, play Bailey, or get Maddison and swap out Zaha in game week 10?
Yep. I'm on number 2 right now. But obviously a Hall of Fame manager knows best. So
well, he's asking the question, so he's obviously debating. Look, I would go option 1 personally, because Zaha is viable. I mean, you may not want to take out Maddison, right? Maddison plays Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, and then he has good fixtures throughout. So maybe he disappoints in them and you want an exit route to Zaha. But I would think Zaha is playable against Chelsea. I mean, he's done well against good teams throughout. He's on penalties. So I would just bench Zaha if that was an option.
Yep, fair. I'm pretty bullish on I think we're going to get away with something with Maddison and Barnes. Most likely Maddison, but I think they've had some attacking potential, or at least Barnes.
They've been rubbish this year, man.
They've been rubbish, but okay, all right, fine. But from the extended highlights I've watched in the past few games, maybe there's something to hope for in the good fixture run moving forward.
Yeah, look, let's be clear. Maddison and Bowen are 2 leaps of faith. No underlying data, but for Bowen, potentially penalties. For for Maddison, just the fact that he's an attacking guy. You want to also sort of add a narrative, right? Both Bowen and Maddison will be competing for that England spot for the World Cup. So, they'll be hungry. They'll want to sort of be visible. Maddison always talks about it, by the way. He always talks about him wanting to be more involved, and the World Cup is coming. So these things will become more and more a narrative as we get closer to the World Cup. So they're decent punts for the fixtures, and fixtures bring form. So I think you could look at that.
Yeah, they're all fixture play. There's no, they've had tough fixtures, and there's no stats to back up these picks, as you mentioned, Pras.
Yeah. All right. One more question from Krish. Firstly, Krish, if your rank doesn't matter, you should take the decisions regardless of your rank. So his question is, would you take a punt on Perisic? Actually, we talked about that one already. I guess Kulusevski. Tell me your thinking on Kulusevski. So Philip is asking, will Kulusevski start? And for people like me who are looking for a 1-week punt, should we do that?
Yeah, I think he's going to start. I would almost say like 80-90% likelihood that he starts. He's done nothing wrong to be dropped. But it just goes to show Conte's style, right? Even with Son probably playing worse than both Kulusevski and Richarlison recently, he understands that he needs to get Son's output in order for Spurs to level up. And, as good as Sessegnon and Son are together, they're going to need their best players in Perisic, Son, Kane, Kulusevski, and Richarlison all to be firing. But I think it's time Kulusevski starts. With that being said, in the Sporting game, none of the attackers played well, and none of the wingbacks played well, even Perisic. So we don't know. I mean, there was no reason for Kulusevski to be dropped, but we might see Kulusevski and Richarlison both play, but I highly doubt that. So it's one or the other, and I'm going to give it to Kulusevski over Richarlison personally. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Let's now do our last fun segment, which is a free hit draft, because we had like 3 or 4 people ask for it. And I'm going to first heavily caveat that please, whoever's listening here, do not play a free hit. And I'm going to tell you why. you'll have other opportunities. And I think, again, I've talked about it in other streams, so I won't repeat myself, but there will be at least 2 other windows that will come up after the World Cup. In fact, had FPL given us an extra free hit, I would have still argued not to play a free hit and just save it for later, unless your team is completely decimated and you have 3 starters. Even in that case, I would say take a -12. Because if you look at my free hit draft, I'm going to read it out for the listeners. I've got Pope in goal. I've got Perisic, Trippier, Cancelo, and Dean. Again, for people who have, I need to give a trauma warning for the Dean owners, but look, Southampton at home for an attacking wing back, I'm going to go for that, or a full back. Then I've got Foden, Martinelli, and Son, and I've got Mitrovic, Haaland, and Kane. So the reasons for going Kane and Son and Perisic is just the fixture. I'm sort of on free hit. You're taking the punt that these guys will start and these guys will be in the points. The reason for not going De Bruyne is because I think Foden is as good an option, slightly worse. But if you look at the price, you're trying to jam 3 City. I think Cancelo, Foden, and Haaland is the 3 City. You've got one attacker from Arsenal who've got a good fixture against Brentford. You've got a double-up defense against Bournemouth. I could have gone for Isak, but I don't have 4 forward slots. Now, my first thinking is a lot of wildcard teams look like this anyway. Yep. Apart from maybe Dean or, maybe they don't have Kane and Son, but they have De Bruyne. So why would you sort of free hit and not wildcard when you have to play a wildcard before game week 16, but your free hit lasts for the whole season? Don't do it, especially if you have a wildcard. And the other thing I would say is if you only have 6 starters and you've already played your wildcard, take a -8 and get closer to the game week 8 wildcard team as much as you can. If you can cover the big guys, and the big hitters from now until game week 12 are going to be, off the top of my head, Haaland, Mitrovic, Trippier, or a Newcastle defender. It's going to be any premium that you have. It could be De Bruyne, it could be Kane, it could be Salah, it would be James, Cancelo, or a City defender, but that's it, right? So if you have that, everything else is sort of supplementary.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's going to be essentially you want to be playing a free hit in a blank game week because again you're playing, your players versus non-players versus this week. Even the wild card, there's a core template, but there's also many options where we don't really know who's going to bang and who's going to do well. It's a toss-up in some ways for one game week, and I think it's going to end up being a waste unless you get super lucky and all your picks go right and differentials go right, and later the value in the free hit is just going to be greater moving forward. So I totally agree with you. If you don't have a wild card,
it can even be in a double game week. Free hit is powerful any week, but we could have a 20-team game week where every team doubles. It's possible this season. So anyway, enough about free hit because not many people are going to free hit, but it's good to look at the free hit even for wildcarders to see how much do I need to get close to an ideal team, because this is your week to have the advantage. Because now next week, game week 9 wildcarders will come in, or, basically, like you said, you've only got a short window to have a wildcard advantage. It's even thinner this year because everyone's captaining Haaland. It's not like you're switching away from that and things like that. So anyway, let's go to bus team. Or bus team, actually, only because it's only me.
Yep. You want to read it out real quick?
Yeah, and it's really ugly. So again, I talked about it, but I think for bus team, I'll repeat it here. So I've got Ramsdale in goal. I've got Nico Williams, Trippier, Cancelo, and Trent. I've got Andreas Pereira, Salah, and Martinelli. And I've got Plange, Haaland captain, and Jesus. And the thinking is that I'm going to take a hit. So I have 2 free transfers. So I will take a hit. I have 3 options. Option number 1 is the very, very high upside Spurs option where I can go Salah to Son, Plange to Kane. Sorry, Salah to Kulusevski, Plange to Kane, and Trent to Perisic. So basically getting the 3 Spurs guys if you want to really attack that. But there's a lot of rotation risk associated with that. So I could potentially just go Plange to Mitrovic, Salah to De Bruyne, and Walker to Botman because I need to free up the City slot. Or I could even go Trent to Perisic and go De Bruyne and Mitrovic. So with that, I feel like I'm covering the bases against a wildcard 8 team. And this was the reason why I didn't want to wildcard this week. Even though I'm giving up 4 points to the field, I feel like I will have either some Spurs coverage, which they don't have, or I'll have double Newcastle defense, which they have, Cancelo they have, A lot of them are starting Nico Williams and Andreas Pereira, so it's fine to start them as well. Martinelli, everybody has Haaland, Mitrovic. I have Jesus over other people's Isaac, so I feel comfortable with this.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, perfectly fair. The reason I wildcarded, unlike you, Pras, is I was lacking probably 2 or 3 players from where you are. So, even you, it's you could have made the decision to wildcard, but I think it makes sense to give the international break and see what changes and the news comes out, and then you'll be in a great position moving forward from game week 9. Yeah.
Like I said, I think the advantage is pretty much lost. I feel like if Son had scored a brace during Europe and you know that Son is starting, then I can confidently go for a Son, whereas other people would hesitate because Son may not be a long-term pick. Or if Chilwell would have played 90 minutes or 70 minutes, and then you'd go, okay, I'm going to go James and Chilwell, which nobody can. Those advantages are not there anymore. So I feel like I will have just the advantage of one more game week's information, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if Bowen scores a brace, I know I should go with Bowen instead of Maddison. Things like that. If Leicester look really bad, then I won't go for Maddison, where some people would have picked Maddison now. So there is value to information always. There is value to knowing who's had a niggle during the international break and things like that. I'll get another press conference from Potter just before it. So one game week information is always key. Whether it's worth 4 points that I'm using now, I don't know.
Yep. Okay.
So that's just under an hour, right? Not bad.
Yep. 15 minutes. I don't know if I should say this, Pras, but it kind of froze up today for some reason. And, guys, I had spent a lot of time on prepping for this and had a pretty long Sun section as well. And I don't know why, but I couldn't get through it. So I apologize if I was a little struggling today.
You will thread the Sun thread, and he will start and he'll score a brace, and I will get him, and you will switch to De Bruyne. So it's all good.
Yep. Okay. Enjoy the game week. Good luck, everybody. We'll be back after the international break, and it was fun chatting with you, Pras. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone.